Welcome back, everybody, to That's DPI. I'm Zach, and that is Tyler over there. And we have so much to cover in this kind of weird week ahead of the Pro Bowl and then the Super Bowl coming up. A lot of coaching changes that we need to cover, coordinator and head coach wise. We have two ref calls, a rare bonus ref call for you guys. We have some Hall of Fame news to discuss, but we are going to begin with the hottest news of the week. We have covered this story from the very beginning about the Chiefs' new stadium. We've been right on a lot of things too, but we'll get to that. Tyler has some excellent information about the companies that are going to be potentially in charge of the new Chiefs Stadium. So we'll get right to that key segment, and I'll pass it to Tyler for some information.
Yeah, so the Chiefs announced today that there are two finalists for their architecture firm that will build the stadium. It is going to be a company primarily based out of Europe called Populous. They do have branches in KC, but they built a lot of European stadiums, which is why you see Wembley Stadium in front of you. And then the other one is Manica. And we're going to talk about what those stadiums built under those companies look like. And that's going to tell us exactly what the new Chiefs Stadium is going to look at. So we're going to look at first three images of what Populous has designed. And then we'll break down some key architectural features. So right off the bat, we have Wembley Stadium. We've also got, later on, Zach, if you want to go on to the next one, yes, then we've got Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And then the final one is Highmark Stadium. Now, the thing that I see right off the bat, and you'll really see the difference between this one and Manica when we see the Manica renderings in just a moment, but you see a hill kind of in the upper level. You see it a little bit in Buffalo there, and you certainly see it in the upper levels there. You see that elevated hill behind the sideline. You especially see that in Wembley Stadium as well, that first rendering. The other thing you see is you see three distinct levels. You see a lower level, you see 1 to 2 very thin suite levels. You see one suite level in Wembley and Tottenham, couple in Tottenham actually, but then you see 2 or 3 small thin suite levels in Buffalo, and then you see an upper level. Now the thing about the upper level is that the upper level on these stadiums is its own level, but it connects to the mezzanine level behind the goals. So you see that here in Buffalo. And then if you go back to the soccer stadiums too, you see that it's not 2 levels. You see 2 levels. You see that lower level and then just the second level, that mezzanine and upper level kind of together. And you see that again in Wembley there as well. You see that mezzanine level kind of connect. So, okay, cool. So they have a hill. But this tells us a lot about what Arrowhead could look at. Arrowhead is very big with their crowd. The reason that Wembley, Tottenham Hotspurs, and the Buffalo Bills Stadium are important here is because you see a very crowd-centered stadium. You do not see suites on the field. You see all of their suite levels in the mezzanine and middle levels. You see a larger upper deck. You see seats right up along the field. And that's where you're going to get a very high crowd capacity. And it's where you're going to be able to get fans right up behind the players' bench, right up close to the field, and that's where the stadium can hold in the noise. Now, they have not built a domed football or soccer stadium, by my knowledge, but if you have a little bit of a covered stadium, if you have a covered stadium with this type of architecture, a very crowd-centered architecture base, you could have the new Chiefs Stadium as a very loud stadium. So if they do go with Populous, I imagine it's going to be a very standard lower level. It's going to be 2 or 3 suite levels in the middle area, and then a mezzanine level in the end zone that connects with the upper level, very similar to what you see here in Highmark.
In that close kind of sideline, those field level seats in the lower level, they're really, really close to the field at Arrowhead currently, right? That's one of the things that makes Arrowhead so intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely. You see a lot of stadiums, even kind of here in Buffalo, you see a good amount of space behind where the benches are. But at Arrowhead Stadium right now, you're going to see you see it very close. It's really the bench and then the wall almost.
Right.
And if you build a domed stadium, you're going to have to shrink it at least a little bit. So you're going to have to get even closer to the field than where you see right there. But the big thing is that there's not suites on the field level. And that's going to be something that we talk a lot about is suites on the field level as we get to the Manica designs. So here is Allegiant Stadium, opened up in 2020, designed by Manica. We're going to stick with this here. You see behind both teams' benches a team entrance. That's going to take you to a club as well. You also see a very prominent club area on the lower level. In this case, I don't know if you can highlight underneath the suite level at the top of the upper level. Go up that aisle right there. That's good. That's another club level. That's a club premium area. And then you've got 2 suite levels right above that. And then the upper level, this is where I think Manica really has their key feature. That upper level is split into 2 sections. You've got a lower section that kind of takes you behind that end zone too. And then you've got the upper section that stays in the sideline area. So now go on to the next graphic. This is an image of the new Nissan Stadium opening up in 2 years. This is an official rendering from the Tennessee Titans. Take a look behind the bench. You see an entrance for the players on both sides. And then go to that other side too. You can start to see a little bit more up. So you see another player entrance right behind the bench. And look right there. There's another lower level premium entrance. Right above that, you've got 2 levels of suite levels. And then there's your upper deck. A 2-sectioned upper deck where the lower section extends to the end zone and the upper section stays in the end zone area. So if Arrowhead Stadium chooses to go with Manica, you know what that stadium is going to look like? Go to the next slide. That is what stadium is what the stadium's going to look like. This is a very famous rendering. This is not a new rendering. But this is Manica. You see that player entrance behind the bench. You see that premium level, especially on that left side, you can see it more prominently. You see that lower level premium club. You see 2 or 3 suite levels. And then you see that 2-sectioned upper level, lower level behind the end zone, upper section stays behind the side. That right there is a Manica rendering. And the fact that the Chiefs kind of promoted that rendering tells me that maybe they don't go with Manica. Maybe that's not exactly what it's going to look like. But Manica has sure been in this race for a long time. And I imagine that this is what it's going to look like for a good portion of it. Now, as a fan, I hope they choose Populous because that's going to be a lot more crowd-based. That's going to be your suite levels are in the middle of the stadium, not all over on every level.
But yeah, I think it's interesting you bring that up because another reason that I noticed during the research why Manica could be a more likely option is they've built domed stadiums before, Allegiant being one of them. Mm-hmm. Populous still hasn't built a dome, and Mark Donovan and not Brett Veach, and the owner of the Chiefs, Hunt, has made it very clear it's going to be a domed stadium so that they can host a Super Bowl.
Absolutely. And as of today, I don't want to say per Adam Schefter because I could be wrong, but I know I saw an ESPN notification at work that Clark Hunt specifically is now talked about a Final Four and a national championship game for college football. So Clark Hunt is absolutely envisioning a Super Bowl, a Final Four, and a national championship at the new Chiefs Stadium. And right. You're not going to get that with a dome stadium. You're only going to get that with a dome stadium.
Right, basically. Exactly. I see what you're saying. So is your official prediction then that they go with Manica, but you hope they go with Populous? Or...
That is what I'm going to say. Now, I'm not going to – there's certainly a reason that Populous is in the running. The exterior is where I think Populous really thrives. The Titan Stadium is Populous, correct? I'm mixing up a lot of renderings in my head right now.
Titans is Manica.
It's Manica. Okay. So Manica actually does, so Manica, not Populous here. So Manica does a good job with exterior. If you Google search the exterior of the new Nissan Stadium, it's very boxy, but in a very unique way. While if you Google search the exterior of Allegiant Stadium, it almost looks like the Death Star. So if Manica is the architecture firm, which I am stating I do think it will be, it's not going to be a cookie cutter stadium from the outside. But unfortunately, I do think we're going to start to get a cookie cutter stadium on the inside. Like I said, both these stadiums and even the rendering has those very distinct features. And NFL fans have talked about it too. But if you go to the Buffalo Bills Stadium, this is again populous. Buffalo Bills is populous. This is the money. This is it. This is more Arrowhead vibe. You've got the crowd all the way at the field in the lower level. You've got in very Arrowhead Stadium fashion. You've got the suite levels behind the sidelines in the middle of the stadium, and then you've got a very large upper level as well. That is what Arrowhead is. That's what I hope the Chiefs decide to stick with as populous. But I do think it's going to be Manica. Because
Not to mention the
Clark Hunt is
jumbotrons in
incomplete.
the end zone, just like Arrowhead, right?
Absolutely. And part of the reason I'm choosing Manica also for them is because Clark Hunt has specifically mentioned SoFi Stadium, which was not Manica, but he's mentioned SoFi Stadium and Allegiant Stadium. And the thing that Clark Hunt really likes are end zone suites. You see that right there in Allegiant Stadium. It's kind of covered a little bit because of the banners, but right there, those are end zone suites. And then again in, I believe, Nissan, you see some sideline suites right there, just right beside the deck, or excuse me, right beside the player entrance. Go there. You see a little suite premium level right there. So that's something that Clark Hunt really likes. And given the fact that the official Chiefs renderings have Manica's fingerprints all over it,
I mean, it
I
looks
think
just
that's what
like
they've
it.
always wanted. Yeah, this is certainly, maybe it's not the official design, but Manica certainly produced that design.
Right. I mean, it looks exactly like their other renderings and their other real life stadiums. So
Mm-hmm.
I would tend to agree with you. Based on my limited research, you've done it a lot more than me. It seems like Chiefs fans would be smart to lean Manica here, but
Mm-hmm.
with Populous making the new Bill Stadium, which we did see in person just recently and thought it looked really, really cool, it doesn't rule them out. There's a reason the Chiefs are exploring both. So,
Absolutely. And that's where I want Populous. I want Populous because it's not this interior cookie cutter. It looks good. It is very crowd based. It looks good. I'm hoping Populous. If Mark Donovan happens to be a secret subscriber of ours, hear me, choose Populous.
I mean, Brett Veach has been featured on the show, so he's more likely. Maybe he can pass along a message for
There we
us.
go.
But we will continue to cover this developing story as more information comes out. As you guys know, one of our first videos was talking about the new Chiefs Stadium, and we predicted the move to Kansas. And of course, that is now
You also
happening.
predicted the timeline too, by the way.
Yes, and not only that, but I'm sure that you will be right about the timeline of when the Chiefs host a Super Bowl because it's pretty much a set formula at this point. As new NFL stadiums get built, the NFL uses the same formula which you have pointed out. But we do have some additional content relating to the the AFC Championship games. Two ref calls from that game we wanted to point out to you guys. And the first one occurred late in the second quarter. It was a controversial throwaway attempt here from Jarrett Stidham, which resulted in a backwards pass recovered by New England, which then produced their only touchdown a few plays later. So initially, Tyler, what were your thoughts about Jarrett Stidham? Was this pass backwards? Did they get this ruling right?
So this is what's interesting about that call is that the initial call was
That's right.
probably right about here. The whistle blows, the ref is like, that's incomplete. It's incomplete. It's not a fumble. But then they discuss it and they say after discussion, it was a backwards pass. It wasn't a fumble, but it was a backwards pass. So that was after discussion. And I think it's accurate because a lateral pass is a backwards pass in NFL language.
Right.
If it is a lateral pass, it is the same as a backwards pass. So if he throws straight out, it's a turnover. And if you play that,
yeah, he
I think
starts
that's where
right at
you
that
have.
line, and then the ball ends up bouncing behind that line. So that's kind of what they used. I know there was another overhead angle of this, but upon review, it was pretty clearly a backwards pass. The only issue that I have is in this front angle, you can kind of see the ball flight be affected by the Patriots player. And on the broadcast, they discussed if the ball is tipped. Oh, great. What did I do? If the ball is tipped, it can
Here we go.
allow for a reversal of that ruling and allow for it to be, in fact, ruled a forward pass that was tipped. Because we see balls tipped out of the hands all the time. And the hands are clearly moving forward. But I think they're arguing that, no, he did actually throw it backwards. It wasn't tipped backwards. Is that your consensus as well?
It is, but here's what makes it interesting is if you go back just a little bit, what I'm seeing number 53 hit is his wrist. Right. I'm seeing him hit and push his wrist this way, which is not the ball. If he's hitting the ball, then you've batted the ball down, it's incomplete. But if you just push the wrist this way, if you push the wrist that way and then the ball flies after it's hit the wrist, that's a backwards pass. And so to me, I think the refs absolutely got it right. The only thing that I don't like that the refs did was that they blew the whistle. They need to let things play out because this took a touchdown away from the Patriots.
Right. In the game that only saw 2 total touchdowns, they were fairly important in this game, right? And a defensive touchdown would, even though the Patriots did score a few plays later, so the ball doesn't really lie in this spot.
They did score a touchdown after getting the ball, but it took a touchdown away from the Patriots defense here.
Right. And I think that is the most incorrect part of the ruling because I actually agree with you. What your description of, hitting the wrist, which affected the ball flight, not by hitting the ball, but affecting Jarrett Stidham in the sense that it kind of rotated his body a little bit, so he threw it backwards. I mean, that's the correct ruling, and what is essentially a very tough call to make. They discussed and got it right. I think that this is one instance where we can agree that the refs made this call right. Where they screwed up, obviously, is by not granting the Patriots a touchdown when they had a clear recovery. And what's the reason for that? Was it an erroneous whistle that blew the play dead, Tyler?
Yeah, if the whistle blows, it has to be a dead ball. In fact, the whistle actually blew before they had full possession of the ball, but because there was no Denver player around when the ball was clearly picked up, they granted that a clear possession, so the Patriots can take the fumble, but due to the erroneous whistle where the ball has to be dead on the whistle, they did not have any ability to advance the ball, which is why they kept the ball but didn't get a touchdown there because that whistle did blow.
Right. And so we do have a second call for you guys. And it is later in the game and more controversial, in my opinion, because this allowed essentially the game-winning field goal, right? The Patriots would, if the Broncos had gotten this stop, they would have immediately gotten the ball because it was a fourth quarter with around 5 minutes to go it was a fourth quarter. It was a fourth down with around 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. So they would have gotten the ball back with the game tied. The Patriots would not have gotten that quintessential game-winning field goal. It did win the game, but it was in the third quarter, so I can't really assign it that role. And this is another tush push, right, by Drake May. And we see the overhead angle. He tries to go kind of C-gap, and 97 here knocks him in to the guard and kind of stymies him backwards. And
so can you point out where Drake May is on this?
Drake May, right, is number 10. And so we're going to follow this guy. I'm actually going to slow this down, which is what they were allowed to do when they reviewed this, by the way, because this was challenged.
It was called a first down, and Denver challenged it. So Denver thought there was enough to overturn this call.
So Drake May is clearly trying to go to this gap, but he is affected and essentially hit stick by his own player into the guard. And then
here's where we start to lose Drake May. That's where we start to see him
38 comes
get in there.
and 99 comes in, and Drake May is now lost. We have lost Drake May.
And remember that, because that is important.
And then, once we find Drake May, it appears that he's behind the line again, because it looks like he's here.
See,
this angle will give us a better view.
Because once we lose Drake May, I actually can't find him again until it's all said
we have to look
but
here.
We do see him here.
See if he makes any significant progress. Because it looks like he doesn't. It looks like he kind of stays where he was. And if he stays where he was on the overhead angle, I think this is Drake May. If I'm this horizontal individual, because you see this is Drake May's butt, and he is laying down like that. So I believe in the overhead angle, we are looking for a man laying sideways. This is Drake May.
Okay, so that's Drake May.
So we have to gauge whether it's a first down based on this portion of Drake May's body. We don't see the football. What is your opinion here?
So, and this is kind of going back to my very controversial take last week, I think the refs got it wrong, but there wasn't enough evidence to overturn it. I think you're right. Well, pause it right there.
Right here?
See, and it zooms out, yeah. And so it zooms out. And so this is where we can't see him. And we certainly can't see the ball. So there's no evidence to prove that the initial spot was wrong, unless his entire body is just well short of the line. But also that yellow line, while the refs can see it, that's not officially official. Sure. That's just where the TV shows that it could be. But if we can't see the ball, we can't spot if he got the ball here under the pile, or if he's got it down here under the pile. We don't know. Because if he's got it up here during the pile, then he's got it. But if he's got it tucked down more towards his hip, then he's short. So we don't know where the ball is. I do think he is short if we had GPS tracking like what soccer has. Not GPS, but we've got the microchip.
Yeah, and a lot of that is also used with cameras. And unfortunately, we can't get camera angles of where the ball is. That's also what tennis uses, right? To see if it was on the line or not. They use a bunch of cameras. Yeah. So, and I think
he is short at the end of the day, but there's no evidence. There's absolutely zero evidence to be able to overturn this, because we don't know where the ball is. We don't know if it's up here or if it's down here, and those are the difference between it being a first down and it being short.
Sure. And honestly, I agree with you. And for viewers, return viewers, you know how rare this is. But Tyler and I agreeing on both ref calls of the week, I don't think it's happened since like week 2. Okay? The fact that we both agree on this is pretty monumental. But it brings up a broader conversation for me, because I'm going to stop sharing this because it's honestly useless. That's the problem with the tush push as a whole. It's impossible to officiate properly. Impossible. Whether it's a false start off the line, whether it's an alignment issue where people are lining off offsides, or whether it's the fact that we have no idea whether it's a first down or not once the pile happens. It has affected the viewing experience for numerous teams and audiences, because we just have to, essentially go with what the call's on the field, right? Because there's never enough evidence to overturn it. Even in cases where Josh Allen has the ball out of the pile, there's still not enough evidence because we don't have the right camera angle right down the line. So I think that this should be this is probably the 8th straw that has broken the camel's back. The camel was on the ground fighting for its life at this point. The NFL should take action in the offseason and ban the tush push. And I'm changing my stance. I was initially someone who said, nah, the Eagles just run it better than everybody. They should keep it. Nah, the play is broken. If you can't officiate a play, it should not be in the game.
See, and funny enough, I've also changed my stance about the tush push a little bit, but I was vehemently against it. Now, we actually are seeing it officiate a little bit better. For example, in that overhead, we saw everyone lined up properly. The Eagles in the first half of the season were notorious for breaking not just the center's belt line, but really his headline and being offsides themselves. We saw numerous false starts. When you see it lined up correctly without an egregious false start, the quarterback is not getting a given 5 yards. they're getting maybe a yard, and we're having a question of if he gained a yard or not. So it's actually become a lot more stoppable and a lot more defendable when it's being officiated properly, at least pre-snap, as in lined up and false start. But I do agree with you that the ability to hide the ball and not be able to overturn anything, and you just kind of got to go off the vibe of where the quarterback ended up, does perhaps lead to the conversation of should it be banned again. And I'm interested to see if owners are going to try and get it banned again. And also if they're allowed to bring it up a second year in a row. I don't know what the rules are on that.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I'm not sure that there's actually public policy of how the NFL handles those complaints. That's kind of an internal thing. But I think that if the NFL makes a ruling that the tush push is banned, we'll still see QB sneaks, because this would clear this up. We'd be able to see exactly where the quarterback is. QB sneaks have been in the game for decades, and there's never been a problem with them. It only becomes a problem when Drake May is obscured from view because so many people are pushing this pile. Mm-hmm. I also, I think that the fumble that Jalen Hurts had on one of the tush pushes against, I think it was the Giants, was also one of the worst officiating blunders of the season. Do not worry, do not fret. We will cover all of the worst calls of the year in a later video. But yeah, if it is the subject of half of our ref calls of the week, there's no way the NFL can continue to allow it if it's going to cause so much officiating controversy. When I do think that officiating problems are the number one thing threatening the NFL.
Definitely, because you get people questioning the integrity of the game. And that's really what jeopardizes the NFL the most. Is it rigged? Is it not rigged? Are the refs fixing games? Are the refs costing game? And when you've got horrible tush-push calls, whether it be Jalen Hurts fumbling the ball and not being called a fumble or false starts, you start to ruin the integrity of the game.
Agreed. Speaking of the game and the tush-push that lost the Bills the game against Kansas City a year ago, a key part of that was Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator of Buffalo, who's now been promoted to head coach with the departure of Sean McDermott. I am shocked that this is the move that they decided to make. I see you smirking over there. I kind of want to get your thoughts on this first, because I have a feeling that we'll agree on this one too. But what do you think of the hiring, or the promotion rather, of Joe Brady for Buffalo?
I feel so bad for the people of Buffalo, man. This would be enough for me to turn in my jersey if I was a Bills fan. The way they've lost in the playoffs the last 5 years, and then you fire Sean McDermott, who maybe was responsible for some of the playoff losses, but certainly not this one. And then the owner calls out a wide receiver who's still on the team, and then hires the offensive coordinator that coached the quarterback that had 4 turnovers in said game. I feel so bad for the people of Buffalo, man.
Right, and the whole thing.
I don't understand it.
Right,
I don't understand why Joe Brady.
Exactly.
Given what the owner and GM have complained about.
Exactly. I was like, the whole kind of message that we've been getting from the Buffalo Bills organization is that we're stuck in a playoff rut. Okay, so don't bring back the guy who's been instrumental since 2023 in said playoff rut. Wouldn't it make more sense to bring in a fresh set of eyes? Bring in a new perspective? Obviously,
no, 100%.
We disagreed with the firing of McDermott in the first place. We both think it should have been the GM in the front office, because the one draft that McDermott actually did was the draft before they hired Bean, their current GM. It was excellent. So McDermott, I think, hasn't coached too many horrible games. I think you can pin a couple of them on McDermott, but you can pin a couple of them on Josh Allen too. Like, is it entirely Sean McDermott's fault that the Bills scored 10 points against Cincinnati and lost 27-10 in the snow in a game they should have had the advantage? I don't think so. I don't think that's fully on McDermott. I think a lot of the blame lies on Josh Allen, and a lot of the blame lies on Joe Brady, the guy who's now going to be coaching the Bills again. It's absurd.
My big anti-Joe Brady moment is actually last year's AFC Championship game because, yeah, there was Josh Allen short or not, but Josh Allen had the ball in last year's AFC Championship game. Josh Allen had the ball with 3 minutes to go. It wasn't even 2-minute warning yet. And the play calling was atrocious. Their fourth down call, they tried to do like a Hail Mary thing on 4th and short that gave the Chiefs victory formation. That's who's leading the Buffalo Bills now, is the play caller of that.
Yeah, it's pretty absurd. And
the only one that was not in any way Allen or McDermott or Brady was 2021, the 13 seconds game. That was primarily the defense allowing the Chiefs to go up the field because they were protecting the sidelines instead of when the Chiefs had 3 timeouts, and then Allen never touching the ball in overtime. That's the only one that's not on Brady or Allen.
Yeah, that one you could
Everything
argue.
Else,
You
Brady's
could argue McDermott, since he's supposedly a defensive-minded head coach and probably has to sign on the defensive calls. Playing prevent only does one thing late in games, especially against Patrick Mahomes. It prevents you from winning the game, and that's what happened to Buffalo. But Joe Brady, this is a catastrophic hire for me because when we looked at hires that were confusing, like the Drew Petzing hire for the Lions earlier in the year, I think that there were actually, once you looked deeper into it, there were some upside, some hidden upside to a guy like that for a team like Detroit. At least he's an outside guy. He has run game help, whatever. Joe Brady just feels like they wanted McDermott gone and they want to run it back again, which is exactly what they've been telling us they don't want to do. So I think this ownership is borderline incompetent, and they have been for quite some time. So I'm not surprised.
I agree. And then the last thing I'll say on that matter is because one of the things that they've complained about and said Sean McDermott was being fired for was Keon Coleman, who's still on the roster. I would not be surprised if Keon Coleman requests a trade after the stuff his GM and ownership have said. But they've said that, yeah, we didn't like the Keon Coleman draft. That was on the coaching. So then they promoted the offensive coordinator that drafted Keon Coleman.
Yeah, I mean,
what are they doing?
They're essentially blaming the drafting of Keon Coleman on Sean McDermott, right?
On Sean alone, not because the GM even said the coaching staff. They're blaming it purely on Sean.
Yeah, it's fascinating. But yeah, no, we both agree. Once again, this is a very cordial episode between the two of us. Unusual. We both agree. That's how bad it is. If Tyler and I both agree that a hire is trash universally, it's got to be trash. I don't even have, like, even ask the most optimistic person you know, and they will still despise this hire. That's how bad it is. But we're going to move on to some better hires. Any hire is going to be better than this. The Baltimore Ravens had a huge coaching vacancy after they departed from Harbaugh, and they filled that with Jesse Minter, a former defensive assistant for Baltimore from 2017 to 2020. He was actually the defensive backs coach in his final year there in 2020. Then he was the most recently the defensive coordinator for the LA Chargers the last 2 years. He is 43 years old, so another young up-and-coming coach. I really like this hire for Baltimore. They certainly needed some defensive help after the loss of Mike McDonald, who's now going to coach in a freaking Super Bowl for Seattle. And this guy fits that mold, in my opinion. But I'm curious your thoughts, Tyler. What do you think of Jesse Minter?
Remind me who he was the defensive coordinator for. You said the Chargers?
Yes, that's right. Your division rival.
I wouldn't love this hire. And maybe it's just because I'm comparing it to Harbaugh, who I thought shouldn't have been fired. But to me, this is for sure a downgrade step. The defense has always played well in Baltimore, well-ish. It's been the offense struggling. It's been Lamar Jackson stalling, Zay Flowers committing costly turnovers. That seems to be where, and Lamar Jackson getting hurt this year, that seems to be where I think the team stalls. So bringing in a defensive-minded coach, I don't think is actually going to help them fix where their issues lie. And it's their offense stalling when it's needed most. So I don't love this hire. I think they should stick with the defensive minds that they currently have. continue to develop their stars that they currently have, and then bring in an offensive-minded coach to work with two-time MVP Lamar Jackson and make him the next Mahomes or whatever quarterback you think is the best. That's
Yeah,
the direction I think Baltimore should have gone.
I think it's interesting because we know from the organization and from the rumblings about Harbaugh's firing that the reason that they let Harbaugh go, or one of the reasons that contributed to it, is they wanted to get rid of Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator. So, and Harbaugh wouldn't let him. So there was disagreement over the offensive scheme. The offense, like you said, maybe was sputtering a little bit this year. And so the front office wanted to make a change. Harbaugh wouldn't let them. So they got rid of both of them essentially and replaced them with a defensive minded head coach. And I think that Baltimore was more successful when they had a really sharp defensive mind in their coaching staff. I point to Mike McDonald because that guy is a genius. And he's now, look at him. He's now coaching the Seattle Seahawks to a Super Bowl, right? He was their defensive coordinator in 2022 and 2023. He takes over in Seattle and has them in a Super Bowl in year 2. That's what I think the Ravens see. They see that model of a young, he's only 38 out there, Mike McDonald. They see a young defensive coach who had a ton of success with Baltimore going on to a Super Bowl. They're like, we need to run it back with a guy that we've had before, Jesse Minter, who's had some great defenses with the Chargers the last 2 years. That's their idea. And then they're going to change the offense, like you said. They're going to bring in a new mind, maybe some of the guys that have been fired today. They're going to change the offense. That's the idea here, because the reason they got rid of Harbaugh was because they couldn't change the offense under Harbaugh. They were stuck. So
yeah, and maybe when they hire that offensive coordinator, I'll feel differently. But I wouldn't be happy if I was a Ravens fan right now. It's to me, the organization's definitely gonna be, the coaching staff at least is gonna be worse than it was last year.
Yeah, I do think that they're going to have to kind of start from the ground up a little bit, especially switching to a younger head coach. He's going to have to rebuild the culture because Harbaugh was such a huge part of that, right? So, but there's one more head coaching change that we need to talk about. It's also in the AFC North. It also is a replacement of a longstanding coach. It is Mike McCarthy taking his third head coaching job, replacing Mike Tomlin. A former Dallas Cowboys head coach and Green Bay Packers head coach now takes on his third team at age 62. Tyler, what are your thoughts on the Mike McCarthy hire?
I don't know what they're trying to get out of, unless the only thing I can think of is the Steelers want Aaron Rodgers one final year, and they want Mike McCarthy, the guy who coached Rodgers, to his lone Super Bowl. And they're like, hey, if we bring in Mike, then we'll have a good year with Aaron Rodgers one more year. Other than that, you just replace Tomlin with a mid-Tomlin.
That's exactly my thoughts. Because what problems did both the Dallas Cowboys under Mike McCarthy and the Green Bay Packers face under Mike McCarthy? Really talented teams that couldn't get over the hump. What problems did the Steelers have under Mike no losing seasons Tomlin? Really talented teams that couldn't get over the hump. He has won Super Bowl with arguably one of the best quarterbacks of this generation, Rodgers. And other than that, he has a bunch of mid-seasons. And then he went 3 straight 12-win seasons with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. And what does he have to show for it? What does he have to show for it? 1 playoff win. Unbelievable. It is a joke.
And same thing with Tomlin. Tomlin was kind of that way too. He had maybe one playoff win in the last 4 or 5 years. And also, Mike Tomlin and Mike McCarthy last saw the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 45. Like, it's the exact same thing. They're the same person.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable that this is how it's going to go. But all right. I mean, does this mean that Rodgers is coming back for one final year with his good time buddy, Mike McCarthy?
I do think the answer is yes, actually. I was very set. Actually, to credit your point, Aaron Rodgers is going to spend all offseason thinking about it, and then at the last second, he's going to announce his one final year and make all offseason and all year about himself. That's what Rodgers is actually going to do. So, but especially with Mike McCarthy coming back to Rodgers' team, yeah, I do think Aaron Rodgers is going to take one more year. But to your credit, he's going to be very dramatic about it and make it all about himself.
Yeah, you know how much I love Aaron Rodgers as a Lions fan. You know, we love him in Detroit. So, yeah, I would give this head coaching hire a C. Because I do think that there are advantages to having Mike McCarthy as a head coach. He can win. But for a team that just gave up a coach that they fired essentially for not getting them over the hump, to hire a head coach with the same problem seems like you're not solving the problem that you fired your coach for. If you were going to do that, why not keep Tomlin? If you want to just stay mid, keep Tomlin and don't, piss off Steelers fans and piss away one of the best coaches in NFL history, objectively. Record-wise, he is. So, I don't know. This is very interesting. There are some other coaching changes we want to cover briefly, maybe a little lightning round, right? There's been some OC changes. The Jets have fired Tanner Engstrand, former Lions offensive assistant. He was their offensive coordinator under Aaron Glenn. He was a part of a wholesale firing of pretty much every assistant underneath Aaron Glenn in the Jets organization. To me, this is the Jets saying, hey, Aaron, we still believe in you, but this is your last shot. You have to fire everyone and try again. Because, there was a ton of head coaches available, and the Jets still stuck with Glenn, which is a nice vote of confidence from a typically trigger-happy organization to fire head coaches. But they did make him get rid of his entire staff. So Engstrand will leave. I have a target for him, actually, where I think he may go.
Where's Dots?
Tyler Roll, the Lion, not you, the Lions tight ends coach, left to offensive coordinate Iowa State in the Big 12. Engstrand was a former Lions tight end coach. If he doesn't get any OC offers, which is very possible, he just coordinated the Jets, he could return in that tight ends role, maybe progress up the ranks again in Detroit and get another OC opportunity in years past. Engstrand's very young. So that is where I could see him potentially going. But curious your thoughts on the firing of Engstrand and the rest of the Jets staff, essentially.
I think you covered it very well. It's a good nod to Aaron Glenn. Like, hey, we still believe in you, but we can't just pretend that coaching wasn't an issue. We're gonna stick with you. You've been in a culture that knows how to win. Hey, Dan Campbell didn't win much his first year, so maybe you're taking the Dan Campbell approach, but you got to go find the guys who are going to win. I think it's a very rare Jets W. Especially this year, a very, very rare Jets W.
I do think that firing Engstrand was a mistake, but I understand why they did it. Engstrand led a top 10 rushing attack with one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen, Justin Fields, this year. Holy smokes. He essentially set the position of quarterback on fire this year. So not much to work with the guy. He turned Breece Hall and that Jets offensive line into a weapon that won 3 games. That's more than they should have, in my opinion. A team that had no interceptions. Obviously, get rid of every defensive assistant. That is an abomination. But Engstrand, I don't think, had a terrible debut as a play caller.
I just think he's taking the heat for how bad Justin Fields was. Yes. I get it. Someone kind of needs to be held accountable.
Right. It is definitely a scapegoat for sure. And that's why I understand it to an extent. I'm just glad they kept Glenn around because I do think Glenn has a bright future as a head coach. But speaking of a head coach who we thought had a bright future, Brian Daboll, former Giants head coach, is now going to work under Robert Saleh in Tennessee as the offensive coordinator. So you've got your defensive mind in Robert Saleh, and you got your offensive mind in Brian Daboll. I think that's a great hire. I think the Titans are finally getting their act together after making one of the worst decisions in franchise history, firing Mike Vrabel, who's now going to be coaching for a Super Bowl.
I agree. I think this is a good hire. Brian Daboll is a good coordinator. We saw that with both Buffalo and Kansas City. And I think this is a great move. Bring in that offensive mind, but don't make him the head coach. We just want his scheme, especially with being working with a young quarterback like Cam Ward, the same way Daboll, if I'm not mistaken, worked with young Josh Allen. I think it's a great hire by Tennessee.
100%, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head working with young Josh Allen. I think that Cam Ward shows a lot of signs to be like one of those playmaking quarterbacks that can really turn the tide of a franchise, as we've seen with Allen and Mahomes, who literally changed the entire trajectory of their franchises. One, of course, better than the other. But yeah, Dable was one of the most sought after offensive minds available in the coaching carousel. And for the Titans to land him says a lot about what people think in the NFL about their situation. They see it as an opportunity worth pursuing. Unlike the Cleveland Browns and Raiders, who still don't have head coach, and the Arizona Cardinals, of course, who are 3 vacancies left. Pretty brutal to be those 3 teams, because the Titans seem to be getting their act together. But there's one more team that made a pretty massive coordinator change, and that is Denver. After losing with their backup quarterback by 3 points in the AFC Championship, they have let go of Joe Lombardi, which this move makes no sense to me. Was the offense that bad?
Denver will boo you and cheer you on in the same quarter. I don't know why they let go of Joe Lombardi. Knicks played phenomenal. Their offense, it was certainly not the reason they won the AFC West. That was certainly because of their defense. But their offense played fine. You've got Cortland Sutton that did well. You've got, like I said, Bo Nix that did well. Just get a couple more wide receiver depth and maybe some stronger alignment, and you've got a great offense. This one surprised me too.
I think they were well underway to doing that. They had Pat Bryant, their rookie from Illinois, really working his way into the offense late in the season. They had guys like Troy Franklin, young with a lot of upside, sitting behind Cortland Sutton. They had Marvin Mims, who's kind of a gadget style Xavier Worthy type player. So they had, and I think that they had a good offensive approach. They also lost J.K. Dobbins, their starting running back, and had to play their backup running back. I thought that they were doing really well with what they had. But to say that their offense was doing fine, I think there were some really below average performances this year that they were saved by their defense. But yeah, it seems like a pretty rash move.
The case. Maybe that is the case because maybe they had great fourth quarters all year long, but maybe they're going to look after the guy that's like, hey, we've got a great defense, we've got a great quarterback in Bo Nix. Let's go get a coordinator that'll coach a good offense all 4 quarters and not just the fourth quarter. But yeah, I was certainly surprised about that one too.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But we'll see who they end up hiring in that spot. It could reveal why they made that move. One more coaching related piece of news, and it's for you Lions fans out there. I know that there's not as many of you that subscribe, but I want to make sure I cover the addition of Mike Kafka, former New York Giant offensive mind. He was promoted to interim head coach when they let go of Brian Dable, and he has been a chief in the past, right, Tyler?
He was a quarterback coach, promoted to an offensive coordinator, and then he moved to the Giants.
Yeah, and man, what's crazy about this is I wanted him as OC.
He was not an offensive coordinator. I apologize. He was a quarterback coach in KC, and then became an offensive coordinator under Dable in New York. He was never a chief coordinator. I apologize.
Got it. But rather, he's always been an offensive mind coveted by some of those other offensive minds, i.e. Andy Reid, Brian Dable. They've respected his creativity. And I thought that what Mike Kafka did as the interim coach of the Giants this past season was excellent. Jameis Winston was throwing the ball around the yard. I really liked his creativity with the pass game, particularly some trick plays. One of them happened against Detroit where they threw a touchdown to Jameis Winston. I'm sure everyone's seen it because he freaking stiff-armed Derek Barnes into the end zone. So I was really hoping they would sign him as an OC, and I was kind of disappointed with him out there that we signed Drew Petzing. But now we get the best of both worlds, baby. We get the run game prowess of Drew Petzing and the passing creativity of Mike Kafka. This is an all-in style move for Detroit, in my opinion. If you bring in that kind of offensive superpower, Dan Campbell is serious about making sure this scheme is up to snuff next year. And I'm all for it. This is excellent offensive change. Bring in some outside opinions, creative young minds, and they're both bald. It's amazing. We're going to have the best bald. They are both very bald if you look at pictures of them. So we're going to have the baldest and most talented offensive minds in football. That doesn't even include Dan Campbell and Jared Goff, who I think are also excellent and have a ton of impact on the scheme. So Baldies unite. Let's get it. I'm very happy with Detroit for that move. But curious your thoughts. You've had experience with Kafka coaching the quarterbacks, especially early in Mahomes' career.
Yeah. My only concern is, are there too many chefs in the kitchen now? Because Kafka, Mike Kafka is coming in not as the offensive coordinator, just as like, well, what is his title?
We don't have his title yet. It's reported as a high-ranking offensive assistant. That's it.
So, and that's where I'm hoping that Drew Petzing, am I saying that correct?
That's right.
Petzing.
Yep.
So I'm hoping that Drew Petzing and Mike Kafka don't clash heads with their schemes as to like, wait a minute, who's actually the offensive coordinator? Like, yeah, it's Drew Petzing, but like, who's actually like? I can see there being a little rift there. It's kind of like when an NBA team builds a roster of all superstars, and then they realize that they cannot cooperate together, and so the team doesn't do well. That's my only concern outside looking in.
Yeah.
Do you have too many superstars on your team?
I have one counter to that, and it's addressing the exact problem the Lions faced last season, where there was not enough chefs in the kitchen. Dan Campbell demoted John Morton after week 9 and took the head coach OC role and play caller role. So Dan Campbell wore too many chef hats. You can only fit one. I mean, maybe you can fit two because Dan Campbell has a pretty big head. He's a big dude. But you can't fit 3 hats on the Dan Campbell. And so I think that this is a smart move, and it'll be interesting to see how Dan Campbell utilizes each of them. To your credit, I do think it will be a balancing act. But if there's anybody that we trust in the NFL to manage a staff, it's the guy who has in his coaching tree Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. I think that those guys turned out to be some of the better assistant coaches in the league. They were both hired away pretty early in Dan Campbell's coaching career. So I think if there's anybody who we can trust to manage staff, it's Campbell with Kafka and Petzing.
And that's fair. I won't argue that point. That's just my concern, because this is certainly unprecedented to do.
It is weird because, like we were talking about earlier, and speaking of sought-after candidates, Kafka was a sought-after candidate. He probably easily could have taken one of those open head coaching jobs. He just may not want to. He might want to be in a place where, he's not on the hot seat as soon as he signs the paper, right? So that could be Kafka's angle as well. But, man, we talked about a lot of coaches today, and we're not done because we have one final coach to discuss. This one has been retired for quite a while, and his name is Bill Belichick.
5 years. He's been retired 5 years.
And that's an important number, right, Tyler? Because what do you get access to after 5 years?
Eligibility in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Bill Belichick did not make the finalist list in his first year of eligibility. Bill Belichick will not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I think I have my reason as to why that is, but I want to hear your thoughts for a second. Why is Bill Belichick not getting into the Hall of Fame in his first try?
6-time Super Bowl champ, 3-time Coach of the Year. The funny thing is, you asked that question. I don't have an answer for you. This should be the most shoo-in first ballot Hall of Fame coach that you can possibly have since Vince Lombardi. Like, come on. Nobody has done it better than Bill Belichick this century. Nobody. Not even Andy Reid at this point. And I think Andy Reid's done a lot of great things, and he's halfway to where Bill Belichick is when he retired. Unbelievable.
Bill Belichick actually has 8 Super Bowls.
Right.
He's got
2 as an
6 as a head coach and 2 as an assistant. So an 8-time Super Bowl champion, a 10-time AFC champion, and a 2-time NFC champion.
10-time AFC champion. And
here's
20 years?
20 more than 20 years, because his first Super Bowl was 2001 as a head coach. And then his defensive coordinators were in the 90s. But still a remarkable career. But here's why I think it didn't happen. He pissed off the writers. That's it. We see this a lot in baseball, There's a lot of times where a guy in baseball should make the Hall of Fame, but he pissed off the media so much during his career that they never voted him in. And then there are guys in baseball who's actually it just should only be in the Hall of Really Good, but they were loved by the media, so the writers voted him in. Bill Belichick, when he got fired in New England, had no one in the NFL coming after him. One of the best head coaches of our generation, of multiple generations.
Agreed.
No one in the NFL came after him because he burned so many bridges during his time that no one said, "Oh, poor Bill," when he got fired in New England. And I think that's coming back again. He had to have burned so many bridges, even in the voters, that no one said, "Poor Bill." They just don't like him. That's the only reason, because criteria-wise, he is everything that a Hall of Famer is. Well, I guess not Hall of Fame coaches, but in coaches of all time, it's like Don Shula, Vince Lombardi, Bill Belichick.
Tom Landry, maybe, right?
And even above Tom Landry, I'd say.
Yeah.
For sure. And he did something behind closed doors to piss off a lot of people.
And that to me,
that's the only explanation.
That to me is a serious indictment of the writers and the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Absolutely inexcusable. There are guys that you can make the argument for not making it, but Bill Belichick is not one of them. He unquestioned one of, if not the greatest head coach in NFL history, because it only got harder to win in the NFL as the decades went on. So comparing him to guys like Lombardi and stuff like that, yeah, those guys were great, but they didn't have to win in the era of the NFL becoming the premier sport in the United States. For a long time, those guys were still second fiddle to the NBA or MLB. No. Bill Belichick won in the era where the NFL was king. And so I think the NFL Hall of Fame already gets a lot of flack because it lets in so many people. It's not as selective as the MLB. It lets in some guy, and it has let in some guys in the past that, don't even come close statistically to guys now just because of how the game's evolved. But this is, come on. The last thing the NFL Hall of Fame needs is more threats to their legitimacy. And that's essentially what they've done again today with Bill Belichick not being a first ballot, unquestioned, unanimous Hall of Famer. Ridiculous stuff from them. I am shocked.
And here's the criteria specifically of how to get into the Hall of Fame. There are 50 votes. You have to get 40 votes. And I'm trying to find exactly how many votes he did get, which 40 out of 50 is 80. You have to get 80% of the votes required to make the Hall of Fame.
A B.
Yes. And which is shocking. So I can't find the number right at the bat, and I don't think I've seen the number.
It may not be published,
and it may not be yet. But he did not get 40 of 50 votes.
Ridiculous. And I think
he had to have pissed off so many people somewhere. Yeah.
I think you're right because there's no other explanation. Because this is like keeping Jerry Rice out of the Hall of Fame. That's the only comparison I can make. The unquestioned statistical leader, and he has a ton of Super Bowls as a wide receiver. That would be essentially like keeping Jerry Rice out because he was a little disgruntled sometimes at the podium, and that's not a reason that you should be left off the Hall of Fame. I don't even think that Bill Belichick was all that horrible to the media. I think that he was short and had a very low tolerance for BS, and that's fine by me because that's what you have to be like if you're the coach in New England.
It's just a thing because I do remember him after leaving New England. No one in the NFL gave him a look. No one wanted him, and that's a GM and an executive thing. So, what do we not know? Is kind of the situation. Is kind of really what it is.
Maybe.
What did he do outside of the media that made him piss off owners, executives, and general managers?
Yeah, I mean
that's really what it. And we'll never know. We're not going to know that really unless the voters say, "Here's exactly what Bill did to make me not vote for him." But this is the first time in football history that we've seen someone so prominent.
Yeah, this is the NFL's Pete Rose, essentially.
And even then, like Pete Rose had legitimate scandals, Belichick's had controversial scandals, but nothing fully proven really. It's just
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
odd.
and they were all, enforced as punishment, like Deflategate and Spygate and all that stuff. All of that
Yeah.
was punished by the league, So I think it's very interesting. But that is the last item we have
Mhm.
for you guys today. Make sure you stay tuned because next week we're going to be looking back at some of our old takes and predicting the winner of the Super Bowl. So lots of great content coming up for you guys. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of the off-season content. That is where we really shine too. So thank you for watching and take care.
Appreciate you guys.